M6A1 is unusual heavy tank because it has a lot of guns. In addition to the main gun, it has smaller secondary gun, and in addition to usual for American tanks machine gun placed on turret, there are 2 more high caliber Brownings. But the question that is most important for us, does all this additional firepower has any use in game? The first words that come to mind when I think about this tank: comfortable and active. First of all, tank feels comfortable because of its main gun that can shoot APHE shells and can reach good penetrations for battle rating 4.7. Most of soft targets can be shot anywhere in silhouette, though penetration will not be enough to ignore angled plates on heavier tanks, especially when you are over-tiered. Then you will have to aim for weak spots that will most certainly be penetrated. After that, the shell with over 60 grams of explosives inside will do the rest of the work, usually one-shotting enemy vehicle. Because of the sufficient amount of explosives, the only thing you have to care about is to penetrate opponents somewhere, which is easy to do. Even targets at longer ranges shouldn't be a problem. Another comfortable thing is stabilizer. Yes, it only works at low speed, but how fast are you going to be driving a heavy tank anyways? In game environment, that means that you will be able to shoot first when you and opponent notice each other at the same time. Secondary gun mostly contributes to an active gameplay. You will rarely kill someone with it, instead it will offer you few strategies unavailable to other tanks. The biggest drawback of secondary gun is penetration. If you struggle to penetrate something with your main gun, secondary gun have no chances at all. Since you will shoot your main gun first, tanks that could be penetrated with 37mm cannon usually will be already killed by the main shell, so you rarely have a chance to use it effectively, especially considering that it can only use solid armor piercing shells that do significantly less damage. Though it doesn't mean that small cannon can be ignored. Main gun reloads 5.9 seconds with aced crew, and secondary more than twice faster. While the main gun is reloading, for example in those cases when you are fighting multiple opponents, it will be a good alternative and will keep opponents busy. Or if you miss the main shell and small cannon cannot penetrate target at all, it still can damage tracks or even break opponent's cannon. Just keep in mind that the shell will hit a little bit to the left from where you are aiming and has slightly different ballistics. And of course, just like all tanks with multiple cannons, you can lure enemies out of cover. Shoot the secondary gun and start to move on first gear. Enemy will think that you are harmless for the duration of reload, and as soon as he peeks out, you will be the first one to shoot the main gun, since stabilizer allows you to do that on a move. When you don't shoot first, you might be in trouble. Despite tank is classified as heavy tank, protection is pretty bad. Not only because the armor is not very thick, but because there are no angles. The only part that could resist shells is a small strip around the gun's mantlet. Actually, if we include spaced armor protecting tank's tracks, side armor will be thicker than frontal. But even if you angle your tank, there will always be an armor plate that is thin enough to be easily penetrated even by weaker guns. 6 crew members could also positively affect your survivability, but they are packed so tightly that one-shots is still a common thing. Additionally, both guns are controlled by the same gunner, so when you lose him, tank cannot take advantage of 2 guns like M3 Lee can in the review that can be found in the top right corner. Another thing both guns share is the turret. Its 18 degrees per second rotation speed is somewhere in between of average rotations of medium and heavy tanks. Gun's depression minus 10 degrees. It's the same as majority USA tanks have. And considering your armor that simply doesn't stop shells, use gun's depression to shoot over hills, which work better than any armor. Elevation is slightly bigger than usual, but it has very little use unless you shoot planes, which is possible of course with all these cannons, but vehicle is too slow to keep up with planes, and most importantly, it will attract your attention from situation on the ground. And you don't want to be in a situation when opponents start to shoot at you and all you can do is waiting for your guns to be slowly lowered and turret slowly turned in their direction. For similar reasons, 2 additional machine guns in tank's hull cannot be used against planes effectively. While in theory, 3 Brownings can deal with planes very well, but in addition to slow aiming, ones in a hull can operate in a very limited cone in front of the vehicle. So leave them for soft ground targets or use it in combination with small cannon as improvised smoke cover by shooting ground between you and opponent, since smoke cover of any type is unavailable to this vehicle. Despite it's a heavy tank, M6A1 accelerates quite well, though it doesn't mean that you can get somewhere quickly because of your maximum speed limit of 35 km/h, and backwards only 4, just like another USA heavy tank jumbo, which review can be found here as well. In arcade, tank is much more maneuverable because of engine boost, and even if maximum speed is still an issue, it is not so significant since you don't get to play on big maps. Most importantly, it retains critical for arcade features, penetration and damage. Since engagements often happen at bigger ranges, your armor might sometimes work and protect from weak guns when you are under-tiered, but it is not enough to count on it anyways, while your penetration should still be enough for weak spots at any range, even when facing tanks a whole battle rating point above you. Things are not so good for the secondary cannon. Usually it cannot penetrate tanks that are facing you frontally, and in arcade you will rarely be in a situation when you need to use secondary gun when someone stands to you sideways. I cannot call this tank overpowered, but considering the firepower, it is not weak as well. I will rate it 6 secondary cannons out of 10. It is very comfortable to play with a good main gun. Additionally, even if secondary gun is rarely useful, something like that is better than nothing. Plus, it's always nice when you can do something useful even between reloads. The gameplay feels more active this way. The biggest problem is survivability, since majority of opponents you are facing use APHE rounds, crew quantity has little influence here. On the other hand, your 2 stabilized guns have enough influence to make sure that no one gets to shoot at you in the first place.